Last time on Everdark Academy, the remaining 3 vampire bloodlines appear in the parade. The Iros, the Kali, and finally, the Seer. The Iros controlled dangerous monsters from all over the Everdark. The Kali demonstrated their mastery of the dead and undead, employing ghosts and an army of skeletons to make their point. And the Seer, well, last but hardly least, the smallest bloodline showed the students sealed envelopes, one addressed to every student, which contained the answers to the questions on everyone's mind. Will they be made a vampire? What bloodline will they be? Who will their master be? Steal the envelope early, and the student automatically wins. Everdark Academy, Episode 19, Remembered or Imagined. The feel of Ryder's arms around Grayson was comforting. It felt right, natural even, and arousing. It had been too long since he'd been with anyone, and his body was hungry to be touched. Normally, he wouldn't allow the guys he was with to hold him, and kissing was only done with closed eyes. He was almost always engaged in desperate, passionate, hot, but also impersonal sex. The thrill was the act, not the person. There was nothing intimate about it, nothing comforting. Yet here he was, leaning back against Ryder's muscled chest, letting those massive arms enfold him and not feeling claustrophobic or the need to break away. He imagined what it would feel like for Ryder to run a hand through the back of his hair and along his neck, just dipping his fingers into the collar of his sweater. Goosebumps rose on his arms at just the thought of those powerful yet elegant hands gliding along his bare skin. All he had to do was turn around in Ryder's arms and look up into that handsome bearded face through his lashes, and he would find out if his imagination captured reality. Ryder would know what he wanted with those needy glances. The Weren vampire wanted it too, Grayson guessed, from how easily Ryder touched him and the smoldering look in his silver eyes. From the first moment they'd met, Ryder had been interested. They could go somewhere, back to his rooms, back to Ryder's place, and feed this hunger in both of them until it was satiated. But it wasn't just raw desire that had him craving more of Ryder's touch. When the spirits had come and the memories had flooded over him.
No, not memories. Nothing like that has ever happened to me.
Ryder's strength had been like a lifeline. He'd been safe, even as his fingers had dug into Ryder's back and he'd buried his head against Ryder's chest. The Weren vampire's scent had been warm and welcoming, like cinnamon and fresh-cut wood. It had blocked out the cold, icy smell of the spirits and the memory of their touch.
Not memory.
But like always, the familiar warning thoughts crowded one on top of the other, like they always did whenever he got too close to someone.
Counting on someone else is dangerous. They'll let you down. Everyone's out for themselves. Don't let yourself get too comfortable with this. Don't trust this. Don't trust him.
With every thought, Grayson had gotten stiffer and stiffer in Ryder's arms, his passion cooling until he stepped out of Ryder's grasp altogether, feeling like he couldn't breathe properly. He needed to be free and loose for when things happened.
What things?
He didn't know. Hadn't the vampire woman and Lawson shown him there were plenty of reasons to be prepared for anything? Things were more dangerous here than they had been on the streets. Back there, he'd been the only one with powers, but here he was just one of many. So he couldn't be weighed down. He needed to be able to get away or act immediately to protect himself. He had felt the reluctance in Ryder's arms in regard to letting him go. He shrugged off the regret at how he suddenly felt chilled without Ryder's warmth. He clapped with the rest of the students at the end of the parade, acting as if he'd lost nothing. "Are you all right, Grayson?" Ryder asked softly over the clapping and the cheers.
Fine. That was pretty cool. The parade, not what I thought it would be.
Grayson tried to keep his tone neutral, even as his stomach knotted when Ryder lifted his hands to touch him again. His stomach sank in disappointment when Ryder dropped his arms at the last moment.
I thought it would be cheesy, but it wasn't. All those powers, pretty impressive.
Yes, it was. But some of the gifts can be overwhelming. Callie's gift.
I wasn't scared.
Grayson immediately pressed his lips together. The disbelief that flashed in Ryder's eyes in that moment told him how foolish he sounded.
I was just... I don't know.
He turned his head and saw Ryder's handsome face looking just like he'd imagined, and he swallowed.
It's gonna sound crazy, but maybe not. You guys say that reincarnation is real, so maybe...
Ryder's eyebrows drew together. Maybe...
It was a memory. The spirits, the way they rose up like mist and then came towards us. For a second, I remembered that.
Good gods, you remembered that.
Demos shared one of those familiar quick glances with Ryder, but he couldn't possibly understand what had happened in just a few seconds. It wasn't something that Grayson could really explain. You thought you'd seen spirits like that before. Ryder sounded almost too casual.
I don't know.
Grayson's eyes went unfocused as he recalled what he'd seen or imagined or remembered or whatever it was. He had been in a dark field. The tall grass had been mostly beaten down around him, as if a great number of people had walked that way. A whole army of them. There was blood on the crushed stalks, and he thought that in the distance he could see bodies on the ground, black mounds among the tall grasses. And then there was this mist that filtered through the stalks that were washed of all color by the moons. It had drifted slowly towards him like that old line about a cat on creeping paws. He remembered, or imagined, that he had gathered his power inside of him. His power was a burning, roaring fire, far greater than he'd ever built within himself before. He'd used the air, thickening it by pushing molecules together and sending it towards the mist, trying to disperse it. But it hadn't worked. The mist kept coming. He remembered, or imagined, the dry sounds of the stalks as he started backing away from the mist, still slashing at it with his power, still looking for something or someone more substantial to attack. But there had not been anyone in view. He'd remembered, or imagined, thinking that maybe one of the black mounds, one of the seemingly dead bodies, wasn't really dead, but was just pretending to be to evade his power. But none of them stirred to alert him to their charade. The mist kept coming. He was moving more swiftly then, turning and running, but still glancing back to check on the location of the mist. It was no longer thin, crawling strands between the stalks. Instead, it was a white wall behind him. There were voices, so many voices, and then he was surrounded by the mist as if it were a wave that had crashed down upon him. And there was silence, so quiet, like the sound had been sucked out. He remembered, or imagined, stopping running as he could not see where he was going, and that was dangerous. He built the fire inside of him higher, preparing for something or someone, and then the mist looked at him. It was then he understood that it wasn't mist at all, but spirits with faces pressed tightly together. They were the mist. They came for him. And that was all he remembered, or imagined. He'd snapped out of it in that moment as he'd turned from the spirit and found Ryder's chest.
I don't know what I mean. I can't remember something that never happened to me. I mean, unless... I don't know.
Ryder just nodded, as if what Grayson had said made complete sense. He didn't feel that Ryder was simply patronizing him. A chill filled him again, and he rubbed his arms. The air wasn't that cold, and his sweater, as much as he disliked it, was warm, but he was still cold. Perhaps we should get you back to your rooms. You look a little tired. The thought of going back to his rooms, where the fire danced in the grate, and a warm, soft bed waited for him sounded really good then, especially when his mind conjured up being spooned by Ryder in that bed. He'd never let anyone sleep with him, ever. But again, here He was wanting things he shouldn't, wanting things that weren't safe. But he did feel safe with Ryder, even though the Werren vampire was associated with dangerous people like Lawson. Before he had a chance to answer, a servant came by with a silver tray with more champagne. Another followed, with mini burgers, steak sandwiches, melty ham and cheese toasts, crab puffs, and more finger food. His stomach growled, and Ryder took some of the food to simply hold for him, because he couldn't carry enough.
Hungry after using my gift, I guess.
Between bites of the smoky ham and sweet crab, Grayson noted that the servant's eyes were not silver, nor had the eyes of the people who had brought Ryder and Demos's clothes earlier, which meant that they were human.
Are all the people who work here human?
Some. Ryder shrugged and offered Grayson a tiny burger with cheese and bacon. He popped the whole thing in his mouth. They are acolytes, but others are young vampires who are earning their place.
Acolytes. They're humans who you feed from, right? Ones that give themselves over in exchange for the chance to be turned?
Grayson searched his memory for the definition of the term. Some of them. Others simply want to be near us and have power. And others have desires that can only be quenched with our fangs. The arousal that had cooled burst to life in Grayson once more. He couldn't help but understand the desire to be with a vampire as he stared at Ryder's long legs, taut waist, and powerful chest. He could easily imagine those lips and tongue and teeth against his throat. Yes, he could understand those desires very well. He finished his champagne.
Look at this! Look at how weird this is!
Mairead came over with Eiji, swallowing champagne herself. Grayson glanced to where she gestured. The vampires stayed in their bloodline clusters, not eating or drinking, but smiling to a certain extent. Yet they were not going over to any of the students, and at the moment, none of the students were going over to them. In fact, Grayson, Mairead, and Eiji were the only humans mixing with vampires.
I admit, this reminds me of some bad middle school dance, where the guys stay on one side of the room and the girls on the other.
Why is no one going up to them? There was nothing in the materials about keeping our distance, was there? No, there wasn't.
Grayson was sure she would know if there were.
Maybe it will take one brave soul to break the détente.
Perhaps, though everyone is pretending they didn't see Grayson and Ryder cuddling.
Well, yeah, the Callie.
Did you know that the first epic-length story in this series, Everdark, is also available as an audio story? It's published in full on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast platforms. If you haven't heard it yet, why not check it out? It's complete at 147 chapters and leads straight into Everdark Academy. I'll post a link to the YouTube playlist and the Spotify channel in the notes.
Mairead cast a narrow-eyed glance at Grayson, who stumbled over his words and rubbed the back of his neck.
Right, sure. Likely story.
You grabbed my hand, Mairead.
I thought you grabbed mine.
But her cheeks were red. Grayson hadn't thought he would like Mairead. She was brash and rude, saying out loud what should only be thought. But she'd come back when he needed help, and she evidently saw Eiji as her charge. Grayson wasn't sure if Eiji needed Mairead, but he didn't seem to object to her, and Grayson found himself softening towards her.
It was impressive. I mean, all of them were awesome, but the Callie, they're a little different.
And it appears we have caught their immortal's interest. Or Grayson has.
Grayson's head jerked up. Caemorn and Balthazar were being lowered to the ground. He wondered if the Asher vampire holding them up would make her way over to confront him then about what he'd done. But it was Caemorn, just like Eiji had said, who started towards him the moment that his booted feet hit the ground. The sound of his walking stick tapping against the stone road as he strode to Grayson.
What is the deal with every immortal wanting to talk to you?
Grayson was starting to wonder himself. If he was to keep a low profile, this wasn't doing it. But maybe he wasn't. Maybe by making him a favorite or something, sect members would gravitate towards him. Ryder stood on one side of him, and Demos went by his other the moment the lithe blonde Callie vampire dressed in crimson stopped in front of Grayson. The memory or imagination of the mist becoming spirits had sweat breaking out on Grayson's brow, but he held himself still. Mairead and Edgy lingered nearby, but Caemorn cast a single look in their direction, and Edgy took Mairead's arm and gently tugged her away. She squawked, but not too loudly, and didn't really resist. Caemorn then turned his attention fully back to Grayson.
Grayson, my name is Caemorn.
The immortal Callie, right? Just like Balthazar's the immortal Iros?
Saying the name Callie felt familiar despite its unusualness. Again, there was this feeling of remembering or imagining.
Exactly.
Caemorn dipped his head. He was an elegant vampire, dressed neatly in a long crimson coat, fitted black pants and boots. He had blonde hair so pale it was almost white. It was shorn close to the sides and slightly longer on the top. His features were fine, almost delicate, and he spoke and moved with precision, as if every single thing he did was thought of and considered carefully.
What can I do for you?
He needs to sleep, Caemorn. He's exhausted. Caemorn lifted an elegant pale eyebrow.
Well, I suppose it is exhausting to be manhandled by a Werin vampire.
I handled Lawson just fine.
Grayson stiffly defended himself. He hated how Ryder flushed and dropped his gaze, looking guilty over Lawson's actions.
Yes, but you were seen.
Grayson looked over his shoulder at the female Asher vampire. She had been waylaid by Balthazar, who was forcing her to pet Mephi. Her eyes kept shifting to Grayson, though.
Yeah, well, that was bound to happen.
Grayson was trying to act like he had wanted to keep it hidden for at least a day. He'd managed to keep it secret on Earth most of his life, but here he'd been sloppy. Yet he didn't quite care.
Some gifts cannot be hidden, but I am here to ask if you would like to attend an interrogation tomorrow.
Who are you interrogating?
He doesn't have to be exposed to her again.
We can tell the old man what we find out. He doesn't need to be there.
It took Grayson a moment to understand what they were talking about.
You mean the female vampire that killed Sam? She's dead, isn't she? I killed her.
Grayson quickly looked over at Edgy and Mairead, who were sipping champagne and talking quietly together. They hadn't heard what he'd said. He focused again on Caemorn.
No, she is not dead. That would have made things easier, but Balthazar insisted on keeping her alive and then diving into her mind. He'll do that tomorrow. We thought it would be good for you to be there, unless you wish to sit through classes on vampires through the ages.
You don't have to go, Grayson. I don't know what they expect you to add.
Perhaps you would like to know more about the people who changed his life forever and murdered his friend.
Caemorn lifted that eyebrow again. Grayson didn't know what he felt about the sect vampire still being alive. He thought he had killed her. He thought he had avenged Charlie, in part.
When you're done questioning her, what happens to her then? She's let go? I mean, Sam was just a human, and just a homeless human at that, so he matters even less than the other mortals. So...
No, Grayson. As you will discover, Balthazar's gift will allow him to turn her into our greatest ally.
Like they did with the monsters?
That had been impressive. But he couldn't see that working long-term. The one Iros vampire had lost control of one of the hags for a moment.
No, not like that. That was crude. It was flashy, but crude. She will literally be ours, in all ways.
So she gets away with it.
No, she won't be her anymore, Grayson. The person she was will be gone. It is a punishment beyond anything you can imagine.
Grayson wasn't sure what that meant or how it would work, but he accepted it. For now.
So would you like to be there to learn some answers?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Then I'll be there too. Ryder did not look happy about it. Slowly, Caemorn turned his silver-eyed gaze on Ryder. It was such a cold and distant look, as if Caemorn were staring down at an insect.
Won't you have your hands full? You have to ensure that Lawson leaves tomorrow, do you not?
Ryder's jaw worked. He didn't back down from Caemorn, even though many strong people would have. He didn't respond, though. Finally, Caemorn tipped his head.
Pleasure to meet you, Grayson. You'll be collected tomorrow at the appropriate time.
Caemorn turned neatly on his heel and walked off, his cane tapping on the ground. Grayson's shoulders slumped. He was suddenly exhausted. Come, let's get you back. Ryder put a hand on Grayson's shoulder.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Y'all gonna be good by yourselves? I want to talk to our people and check in on Lawson and Natasha.
That sounds good. Keep me appraised.
Will do.
Demos nodded his head and stalked off. Grayson watched as Demos headed off towards the Warren. They were all dressed, seemingly in versions of black leather and fur, and staring intently at Grayson and Ryder. In fact, the intensity of some of their stares was strong enough to burn through metal. Ryder glanced over, but seemed mostly unmoved by their looks. Let's go. Ryder's possessive, protective hand moved to Grayson's lower back.
Heading back to the dorm. See you two later.
Grayson waved to Agee and Mairead. Seeing Ryder's hand on him, Mairead simply lifted her eyebrows. Agee waved back, and the two of them headed towards a grouping of vampires. They were going to break the ice. The Asher vampire and Balthazar were nowhere to be seen. He wondered if Balthazar had changed her mind about what she'd seen Grayson do. He didn't know what to think about that. He was slightly ashamed at the relief he felt at the thought that she might not remember what he'd done. He and Ryder walked in silence back towards the dorm. Grayson's mind flitted from one image to the next, of the parade, of Lawson, of Ryder holding him. The last he got rather stuck on.
Are you sure it's a good idea that you're around me so much?
What do you mean?
Your people, the other Warren, didn't look happy about it. Lawson's anger was focused on that too. He was pissed because he thought that you weren't going to hold the line about the whole no fledglings thing.
He had no true reason for his behavior. Grayson had to admit that he liked the fact that Ryder didn't think there was any acceptable reason for what Lawson had done.
Yeah, but your people will think you're breaking from tradition because they'll think you're courting me? What do you call starting a relationship with someone you want to turn?
Courting is appropriate. You do not need to worry about the Warren. Demos will calm them, and once Lawson leaves tomorrow, the rest of the issues will be solved.
Will he leave?
Ryder frowned, and Grayson had the urge to tease those lips back up into a smile. King Damon requested I be the representative of the Warren here. Lawson must go.
I'm sure you're right.
Grayson was lying, though he hoped it was true. They reached the dorm and went up the steps to the doors. They slowed down then. Grayson assumed that Ryder would leave, meet up with Demos, deal with Lawson and the fallout. But Ryder gestured for Grayson to precede him into the dorm.
You're gonna walk me to my door?
I am going to spend the night with you.
You're gonna...
Keep you safe, Grayson. I will do whatever it takes to accomplish this. So, may I come up? Grayson stared at that handsome face. The voice in his head that warned him of becoming attached, of trusting, of wanting too much, of putting himself at risk, started to babble, but he shut them out. Those steady silver eyes were stronger at this moment than his doubts.
Yeah, I want you to come up.
Everdark Academy is a long story at 169 chapters, and you might not want to wait to find out what happens. The written version of this gay vampire series is completely finished and available to read on wraithrain.com as part of your membership. Why not sign up for a month and read ahead? You'll also be able to listen ahead in the uncensored audio chapters too.